Welcome to this explainer. We love to celebrate things like landing rovers on Mars, mapping the human genome, and building insane artificial intelligence. It is so easy to look around at our towering cities and these technological miracles and just tell ourselves, yep, we're the absolute pinnacle of evolution. But today, we're going to challenge that illusion. We're going to look at why human evolution isn't solely defined by those external achievements or a material dominance. What if we've been completely ignoring our internal development?
Let's kick things off with a pretty provocative question, one that shifts our focus entirely away from all that material success. How far have we actually evolved our consciousness? I mean, it's a question we almost never stop to ask, right? We obsessively track our economic growth, we measure our technological speed, but we rarely measure our genuine development of awareness. Today, we're diving into how consciousness can actually decline, even where we're making massive material progress, and what true internal development really looks like.
Section 1. The layers of consciousness.
Let's break this down, because consciousness isn't just some mystical floating concept. It starts right here, in our biology. Step 1 is sensory processing. Millions of years of evolution gave us this incredible neural network to process sights, sounds, and physical sensations. But that's really just the most primitive layer. Then we move up to step 2, cognitive capacity. This is where learning, language, and complex problem-solving emerge. It's the layer that literally built entire civilizations, literature, and modern science. But here's where we usually stop. We just assume step 2 is the absolute peak. Well, actually, scratch that. It's not. Step 3, true perception, is the highest layer. To put it practically, step 2 gives us the cognitive engineering to build a smartphone, but step 3, that gives us the wisdom to actually put it down during dinner. It's kind of wild to realize that accumulating degrees or reading a bunch of books doesn't automatically equal expanded awareness. We can be incredibly tech-savvy yet completely disconnected from ourselves. Someone can hold multiple advanced degrees and still operate entirely from fear, imitation, and emotional impulsivity. Why? Because the evolution of consciousness isn't about how much data your brain can hold like some hard drive. It's about the depth and clarity of your perception. And honestly, it's a shared human trap to confuse the two.
Which brings us to Section 2, intelligence versus consciousness.
We constantly confuse these two things, don't we? Intelligence gives us the raw horsepower to decode genomes or build vast digital networks. And we admire intelligence because its results are right there in front of us. You can physically see a skyscraper or download an app. But consciousness? That operates deeply within. It determines how those powerful tools are actually used. It's the source of our judgment, our self-restraint, and our ethical conduct. A highly intelligent mind without a corresponding growth in consciousness isn't just unbalanced. It can literally be extraordinarily dangerous. So you might be wondering, how exactly do we lose this consciousness? History shows us it doesn't just vanish overnight in some huge dramatic event. No, it happens gradually. It slips away through millions of small, unexamined daily choices. It begins when we let the convenience of a food delivery app or a perfectly curated algorithm replace actual effort. It fades when we choose mindless binge-watching over quiet reflection. We lose it when we let catchy political slogans do our thinking for us, or when just imitating others replaces our own independent judgment. We literally just stop questioning our assumptions about the world.
Moving on to Section 3, language, architecture of thought. Okay, this is a fascinating concept. Our thoughts don't just float around freely in our heads. We like to believe our thoughts exist independently of our words, but they really don't. As we see here, the words you repeatedly use become the literal boundaries of your thinking. Language isn't just a tool we use to chat with each other. It is the fundamental architecture of the mind itself. That means if you look at the subjects that occupy our daily conversations, you can actually trace the exact limits of our consciousness. Because language is the architecture of thought, our consciousness only grows based on the quality of its inputs. Think about it. A mind fed exclusively on a diet of daily outrage, gossip, and doom scrolling is actively narrowing its awareness. It simply cannot suddenly produce deep wisdom out of nowhere. On the flip side, engaging with refined inputs, things like philosophy, literature, or serious historical works, that physically expands our mental horizons. Every single time you engage seriously with these materials, you are literally stretching the boundaries of your own mind. And that brings us to the great tragedy of our modern age. The problem isn't a lack of information. The tragedy is that we are absolutely drowning in data. We possess more information than any generation in human history, yet we think so very little about its consequences. We're facing unprecedented global challenges right now: climate disruption, massive technological upheaval, social fragmentation, yet our public discourse is almost entirely dominated by distraction and intellectual tribalism. We have the knowledge, for sure, but we are missing the wisdom to connect that knowledge to reality.
Section 4. The crisis in education. This failure of consciousness becomes painfully obvious when we look at the very institutions that are supposed to guide us. Modern education is almost entirely obsessed with producing measurable outcomes. We're talking marks, grades, rankings, placements, and ultimately a student's future economic productivity. But in the process, we are completely neglecting our higher purpose: the cultivation of awareness, developing emotional maturity, and nurturing a capacity for deep reflection. We are treating schools and universities like factories that just manufacture workers for an economic system, rather than spaces that create thoughtful human beings, capable of actually understanding themselves.
The result here is that a society can produce the absolute most brilliant algorithm developers and highly skilled CEOs, yet remain completely and deeply unconscious in its relationship with ethics, nature, and basic human responsibility. Technical competence alone simply isn't evidence of higher consciousness. The educational crisis of the 21st century isn't about a lack of facts or a lack of funding. It is fundamentally a crisis of consciousness. We are producing highly knowledgeable minds, absolutely, but we are completely failing to produce wiser societies.
Let's head into Section 5, the inner transformation. To change our trajectory, we have to recognize what's really at stake here. Right now, attention has become one of the most valuable resources on the planet. Literally every corporation, media platform, and political movement is fiercely competing for it. And why does this matter so much? Because whatever you repeatedly give your attention to eventually shapes your perception. If your attention is constantly consumed by triviality, well, your consciousness gradually becomes trivial too. But if you direct it toward meaningful inquiry and genuine understanding, your consciousness expands.
For thousands of years, human beings have dedicated basically all their energy to transforming the external world. We've built empires, reshaped entire continents, and literally explored the stars. But the true test of our species, right here and right now, is whether we possess the courage, the discipline, and the wisdom to transform our inner world with that exact same level of seriousness. The future isn't going to be decided by technology or economic growth alone. It will be determined by the quality of the consciousness guiding those forces.
I want to leave you with this really provocative thought from our sources today. Perhaps true evolution begins when a human being stops asking how much power he possesses and starts asking how conscious he has become. So I'll ask you this today. Are you just accumulating more information and better tools, or are you genuinely expanding your awareness? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really challenge you to reflect deeply on your own internal journey.